The morning sun peeked through the thin curtains of Olivia Chen's small apartment as her alarm clock rang sharply at 5:30 a.m. She groaned and rolled over, hitting the snooze button for just 5 more minutes of sleep. The one-bedroom apartment wasn't much, but it was all she could afford on a teacher's salary in Boston. Another day, she mumbled to herself as she finally got up and shuffled to the tiny kitchen to make coffee. Pictures of her mother smiled at her from the fridge, snapshots of happy moments they'd shared before her mom got sick. It had been just the two of them for as long as Olivia could remember. Growing up in the working-class neighborhood of Dorchester, Olivia never had fancy things. Her mother, Grace, worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. When other kids talked about their dads teaching them to ride bikes or taking them fishing, Olivia would just shrug and say her dad was away on business. The truth was, Grace rarely spoke about Olivia's father. All Olivia knew was that her parents had split up when she was 3 and her father had moved back to Asia for work. Sometimes, on late nights when her mother thought Olivia was asleep, she'd catch Grace looking at an old photo she kept hidden in her dresser drawer. But whenever Olivia asked questions, her mother would just smile sadly and say, "That's all in the past now, sweetheart." By 6:45 a.m., Olivia was dressed in a simple blouse and slacks, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail as she gathered her teaching materials. The bus was crowded as usual, and she held onto her worn tote bag filled with papers to grade and art supplies she bought with her own money for her students. "Morning, Ms. Chen," called out the school security guard as Olivia walked through the doors of Franklin Elementary. "Morning, Joe. How's that grandson of yours doing?" Olivia asked with a genuine smile. She always remembered the details of people's lives. It was one of the things that made her a beloved teacher. Her classroom was buzzing with energy as 23 third graders filed in. Some kids came from homes with 2 luxury cars in the driveway, while others, like little Tanya, wore the same clothes several days in a row. Olivia made sure every child felt equally important. "Today, we're going to learn about different countries around the world," Olivia announced, pulling down a colorful map. "Can anyone find Singapore on this map?" As a few eager hands shot up, Olivia felt that familiar twinge she always got when Southeast Asia was mentioned. Somewhere over there, a man who shared her DNA was living his life, probably not giving her a second thought. After school, Olivia stopped by the corner grocery store, carefully counting out coupons as she shopped. "Making that teacher's salary stretch, huh?" said the friendly cashier, Mrs. Paddle. "You know it," Olivia laughed. "But I wouldn't trade my kids for anything." Back at her apartment, as she heated up leftover pasta for dinner, Olivia checked her bank account online and sighed. The student loans weren't going away anytime soon, and the rent had gone up again. Still, she considered herself lucky. She had her health, a job she loved, and good friends. That evening, as Olivia graded papers on her second-hand couch, her phone rang. It was her best friend, Lily. "How about we treat ourselves this weekend?" Lily suggested. "There's a sale at that nice place downtown." "I wish," Olivia replied, "but I'm saving every penny. Maybe someday I'll be able to travel or buy things without checking price tags first." What Olivia didn't know was that across the ocean, in a gleaming office tower in Singapore, a silver-haired man named Raymond Chen sat behind an imposing desk, signing documents for his billion-dollar airline company. And on that desk, partially hidden behind a stack of reports, was a small frame with a faded picture of a little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. A girl who had no idea that her father was one of the wealthiest businessmen in Asia, or that he had never stopped thinking about her. Little did Olivia know that her life of careful budgeting and simple pleasures was about to collide with a world of luxury she couldn't even imagine. The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Olivia was in the middle of teaching her students about fractions when the school secretary appeared at her classroom door. "Miss Chen, there's an urgent call for you in the office," she said quietly. Olivia's heart dropped. Nobody called her at school unless something was wrong. "Class, please work on problems 3 through 7 while I step out for a moment," she instructed, trying to keep her voice steady. In the office, the principal's face was grim as he handed her the phone. It was the hospital. Her mother, who had been in remission from breast cancer for nearly 2 years, had collapsed at work. By the time Olivia arrived at the hospital, breathless and with rain-soaked clothes, It was too late. Grace Chen had suffered a massive stroke, the doctors explained. She had passed away without regaining consciousness. The next few days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, condolence cards, and casseroles dropped off by neighbors. Olivia moved through it all like a sleepwalker, nodding and thanking people automatically. "Your mom was the kindest woman I knew," Mrs. Wilson from next door said, squeezing Olivia's hand. "She was so proud of you, dear." A week after the funeral, Olivia sat alone in her mother's small house, surrounded by boxes. It was time to sort through Grace's belongings. In the bedroom closet, she found a dusty shoebox labeled simply "Important." Inside were birth certificates, old bank statements, and a sealed envelope with Olivia's name written in her mother's careful handwriting. With trembling fingers, Olivia opened it. The letter inside was several pages long. "My dearest Olivia," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm no longer with you, and there are things you need to know." Olivia sank onto the bed as she read her mother's words. The truth spilled out across the pages, how Raymond Chen hadn't abandoned them as she'd always believed. How he'd actually wanted to be part of Olivia's life, but Grace, hurt by their divorce and determined to make it on her own, had gradually cut him off. "Your father sent money every month, which I put in a trust for your education," the letter continued. "He sent birthday gifts that I returned. He called until I changed our number. I was young and proud and angry, and as the years passed, it became harder to undo what I'd done. This was my mistake, not his, not yours." Tears splashed onto the paper as Olivia read on. At the bottom of the last page was a phone number and an address in Singapore, along with the name of a lawyer in Boston. "Your father has never stopped trying to reach you. I was wrong to keep him from you. Please forgive me, and please give him a chance. He loves you." The next morning, with eyes still swollen from crying, Olivia dialed the lawyer's number. She was told to come to his office immediately. Mr. Goldstein was a short, balding man with kind eyes behind thick glasses. "I've been waiting for this call for many years, Ms. Chen," he said, ushering her into a plush office. "Your father has been my client since before you were born." He pulled out a thick folder. "Raymond Chen has deposited money into a trust fund for you every month for the past 22 years. With interest, it amounts to just over $2 million. Olivia nearly fell out of her chair. "$2 million?" Mr. Goldstein nodded. "He's a very successful businessman. The founder and CEO of Phoenix Airlines, the international carrier." Olivia whispered in disbelief. "The very same. And he's been trying to reconnect with you for years." The lawyer handed her a small package. "He asked me to give you this if you ever contacted me." Inside was a handwritten letter and a first-class ticket to Singapore, dated for the following month. "Dear Olivia," the letter read in careful English, "I have waited a lifetime to see you again. If you are willing, please come. I have so much to tell you, to ask you, to learn about you. Whatever happens, know that I have loved you every day of your life." It was signed simply, "Your father, Raymond." Olivia stared at the ticket, her mind spinning. Just yesterday, she'd been a school teacher with student loans and a cramped apartment. Today, she was apparently the daughter of an airline tycoon, with a bank account containing more money than she ever imagined. That night, Olivia sat on her balcony, watching the stars and thinking about her mother's secret, her father's persistence, and the choice that now lay before her. The inheritance solved her financial worries, but money wasn't what made her finally decide to book that flight. It was the thought of that man across the ocean, waiting all these years, keeping her picture, hoping she might someday want to know him. She would go to Singapore. She would meet Raymond Chen, but she would do it on her own terms. The first thing Olivia did was return the first-class ticket. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate the gesture, but something inside her, that same independent spirit her mother had instilled in her, made her want to do this her own way. She used a small portion of her trust fund money to book an economy seat on the same flight, 1 week earlier than her father had suggested. "Are you sure about this?" Lily asked, helping Olivia pack her suitcase. "I mean, first class to Singapore sounds pretty amazing." Olivia folded a simple sundress and placed it carefully in her bag. "I want to meet him as myself," she explained. "Not as some long-lost daughter he can impress with luxury. I want to see who he really is, and I want him to see who I really am." Despite having access to millions, Olivia still shopped at discount stores for her trip. Old habits die hard, and something about splurging on designer clothes before meeting the father she'd never known felt wrong. She'd grown up valuing substance over style, and money in the bank didn't change that. The day of the flight arrived faster than she expected. Olivia had taken a leave of absence from school, hugged her students goodbye, and left her small apartment in the care of Lily. Now she stood at the airport, passport in hand, staring up at the departures board. Phoenix Airlines Flight 288 to Singapore, now boarding at Gate 27, announced the overhead speaker. Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. This was it, the beginning of a journey that would connect her past to her future. As she joined the line for economy boarding, she observed the first-class passengers already making their way down the jetway, looking relaxed and important with their expensive luggage and perfectly tailored travel outfits. The economy cabin was packed. Olivia squeezed into her window seat, tucking her backpack under the seat in front of her. A large family settled in across the aisle, with twin toddlers who were already beginning to fuss. "It's going to be a long flight," muttered the businessman in the aisle seat next to her, glaring at the children. Olivia smiled sympathetically at the frazzled mother. "They're cute," she said, and meant it. As a teacher, she had a special tolerance for childish energy. 3 hours into the 18-hour journey, one of the flight attendants approached Olivia. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, with a name tag that read Wai Lin. "Ms. Chen," she asked quietly, "we have a seat available in first class if you'd like to move. It would be more comfortable for such a long flight." Olivia was surprised. "That's very kind, but why me? Surely there are other passengers who've flown more frequently or paid more for their tickets." Wai Lin smiled mysteriously. "Sometimes we offer upgrades at our discretion. Would you like to accept?" Olivia thought about it. First class would certainly be more comfortable. But then she remembered her resolve to meet her father on equal footing, not as someone special or privileged. "That's really nice of you," she said, "but I'm fine right here. Maybe someone else could use the upgrade. Perhaps that mum with the twins. They could probably use the extra space." Wai Lin's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. "As you wish." What Olivia didn't notice was the quick look that passed between Wai Lin and another attendant, or the discreet phone call that was made from the galley shortly afterward. As the hours passed, Olivia tried to sleep, but excitement and anxiety kept her awake. What would her father be like? Would she see any of herself in him? Would he be disappointed that she was just a regular school teacher and not someone more impressive? One of the twins across the aisle began to cry, and his exhausted mother looked close to tears herself. Olivia dug in her backpack and pulled out a small travel game she'd brought for the flight. "May I?" she asked the mom, who nodded gratefully. For the next hour, Olivia entertained the little boys with stories and simple games until they finally drifted off to sleep. "You're so good with them," the mother whispered. "Do you have kids?" "I'm a teacher," Olivia explained. "3rd grade. Your students are lucky." Wai Lin passed by again, noticing Olivia's kindness with the children. When she brought Olivia's meal, she lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Have you ever been to Singapore before?" she asked. "No," Olivia admitted. "I'm actually going to meet someone, a family member I've never met before." Wai Lin's eyes softened with understanding. Family reunions can be both wonderful and difficult. "I hope yours brings you joy." What the flight attendant didn't say was that she had worked for Phoenix Airlines for 15 years, and the family member Olivia was meeting was almost certainly the man whose photograph hung in every company office, Raymond Chen, founder and CEO, known for his brilliance in business and his private pain over the daughter he had lost. As the plane continued its journey across the Pacific, Olivia gazed out at the endless ocean below, unaware that her simple decision to decline an upgrade had already set in motion events that would make her arrival in Singapore very different from what she had planned. Wai Lin made her way to the front of the plane, sliding the curtain closed behind her as she entered the galley area. She picked up the crew phone and dialed a number few employees had access to. "This is Senior Attendant Wai Lin on Flight 288, she said quietly. "I need to speak with Mr. Chen's assistant." There was a pause, then a click as the call was transferred. "This is Mei Ling," answered a crisp female voice. "Ms. Ling, we have a situation on board." Wai Lin lowered her voice further. "Olivia Chen is on this flight." The silence on the other end was deafening. Mr. Chen's daughter? But she's not scheduled to arrive until next week. Yes, she booked an economy ticket herself. I offered her an upgrade to first class, but she declined. She seems to have no idea who her father is or that she's flying on his airline. More silence, then. Mr. Chen needs to know immediately. I'll handle it. Wai Lin hung up and turned to find the co-pilot standing behind her. Everything all right? He asked. Yes, Captain Lei. Just a VIP passenger situation. Back in his office in Singapore, Raymond Chen was reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant knocked urgently on his door. Sir, I just received a call from Flight 288, Mei Ling said, her usual composure slightly shaken. Your daughter is on board. Raymond's hands froze over his keyboard. Olivia? But she's not due until next week. She returned your first-class ticket and booked economy a week early. She's traveling under her own arrangements. Raymond stood up abruptly, sending his chair rolling backward. Why wasn't I notified when she checked in? She used her mother's maiden name on the booking, sir. The system didn't flag her. Raymond paced across his spacious office, mind racing. What did Wai Lin said about her? She said Ms. Chen declined a first-class upgrade and suggested it be given to a mother with twins instead. Mei Ling smiled slightly. She also mentioned that your daughter spent an hour entertaining those children so the mother could rest. Something in Raymond's face softened. She sounds like her mother. He walked to the window, gazing out at the Singapore skyline as memories flooded back. Grace's kindness, her stubbornness, her refusal to accept his money after the divorce. She wanted to make it on her own, he murmured, more to himself than to Mei Ling. He turned back. Contact Captain Huang. Tell him to make Wai Lin the primary attendant for Olivia. I want to know everything, what she eats, what she reads, if she sleeps well. But under no circumstances is Olivia to know who I am, or that I own the airline. Not yet. Back on the plane, Wai Lin was now paying special attention to Olivia, though trying not to be obvious about it. She noticed how the young woman declined alcohol, but asked for extra hot tea with honey. How she helped an elderly passenger store his bag in the overhead bin. How she pulled out a well-worn paperback rather than watching the in-flight entertainment. Wai Lin had worked for Raymond Chen long enough to recognize his features in this quiet, unassuming young woman, the same determined chin, the same thoughtful eyes that observed everything. In the cockpit, Captain Huang received the message from headquarters with some surprise. Special treatment for an economy passenger was unusual, but direct orders from Raymond Chen himself were not to be questioned. Keep an eye on seat 34F, he told his co-pilot. Apparently, she's someone important. 6 hours into the flight, most passengers were sleeping. Olivia, still unable to get comfortable in the cramped seat, got up to stretch her legs. She walked slowly to the back of the plane, where Wai Lin was organizing the beverage cart. Can't sleep? The flight attendant asked kindly. Olivia shook her head. Too much on my mind. You mentioned you're meeting family in Singapore. My father. Olivia leaned against the galley wall, suddenly wanting to talk. I've never met him. My parents divorced when I was 3, and I grew up thinking he'd abandoned us. Turns out that wasn't the whole story. Wai Lin nodded encouragingly. My mom passed away recently, Olivia continued. She left a letter explaining everything. Apparently, my father tried to stay in touch all these years, but she kept him away. Her eyes grew sad. I just wish she had told me the truth while she was alive. Wai Lin handed her a fresh cup of tea. Families are complicated. Sometimes people make decisions they think are for the best, even when they're painful. Olivia sipped the tea gratefully. I just hope I'm not making a mistake showing up like this. What if he doesn't want to see me? Wai Lin thought of Raymond Chen, the man who kept a picture of his daughter on his desk for 22 years, who anonymously funded scholarships for American teachers in her honor, who had lived in the same house all this time because it was the last address Grace had for him. I think, Wai Lin said carefully, that you might be very surprised by how much he's been hoping for this day. What Wai Lin didn't say was that at that very moment, Raymond Chen was canceling every meeting for the next 2 weeks, calling his housekeeper to prepare the guest room he kept ready for years, and instructing his driver to be at the airport 3 hours before the flight's arrival, just in case it landed early. The flight was approaching its 9th hour when Wailin returned to Olivia with something tucked under her arm. "I thought you might like to see this," she said, handing Olivia a leather-bound photo album. "It's from our company archives. The history of Phoenix Airlines." Olivia took it with a polite smile, though she wasn't particularly interested in airline history. Still, it was something to pass the time. "Thank you." "Take your time," Wailin said with a meaningful look. "You might find it educational." As the flight attendant walked away, Olivia opened the album. The first page showed a much younger-looking man standing proudly in front of a single small airplane. The caption read, "Raymond Chen, founder, 1989. Olivia's heart skipped. Raymond Chen, her father. With trembling fingers, she turned the pages, watching as the airline grew from 1 plane to 5, then 20, then an international fleet. There were pictures of Raymond cutting ribbons at airport terminals, shaking hands with business partners, accepting awards. In every photo, he looked confident and successful, but there was something in his eyes that struck Olivia. A sadness that never quite disappeared. Halfway through the album, Olivia gasped. There, tucked between company milestones, was a photo that didn't belong. A much younger Raymond holding a baby, her. On the back, written in faded ink, "My greatest achievement, Olivia, 3 months." The next pages revealed more personal touches hidden among the business triumphs. A crayon drawing Olivia recognized as her own kindergarten work, a Mother's Day card she'd made in 2nd grade, a newspaper clipping about her elementary school spelling B-Win. Things she'd never sent him, things her mother must have forwarded. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. This wasn't just a company history, it was her father's way of keeping her in his life, even when she didn't know he existed. The final pages showed Phoenix Airlines' expansion into new markets, its community service initiatives, and charitable foundations. One page highlighted a scholarship program for American teachers wanting to study abroad. It was named the Grace Chen Educational Fund, after her mother. Olivia closed the album, overwhelmed. Her father hadn't just been a successful businessman, he'd been trying to reach out to her, to honor her mother all these years. She looked up to find Wailin watching her from the galley. "Did you know?" Olivia asked quietly when the attendant approached. Wailin nodded. "Mr. Chen is a private man, but everyone at Phoenix knows about his daughter in America. Your picture hangs in his office." "But why show me this now? Why not just tell me who he is?" Wailin sat down in the empty seat beside Olivia. "He wanted you to come to him freely, not because of his position or wealth. He's been waiting for this moment for 22 years, Ms. Chen. He was afraid if you knew everything at once, it might be too much pressure." Olivia looked down at the album again, touching a photo of Raymond standing in front of the airline's headquarters. "He built all this while I was growing up thinking he didn't care about me. He started with nothing, just like your mother," Wailin explained. "He was a flight attendant who saw a need for better service between Asia and America. His first plane was purchased with every penny he had. And through all his success, he never stopped looking for ways to be part of your life, even from a distance." The plane hit a patch of turbulence, causing the overhead bins to rattle. Olivia held tight to the album, unwilling to let it go. "We need to return to our seats," Wailin said, fastening her seatbelt. "But I want you to know something. In 15 years working for Phoenix, I've never seen Mr. Chen take a day off. But yesterday, when he learned you were coming, he cancelled 2 weeks of meetings. He's been waiting a long time, Ms. Chen." As the turbulence subsided, Olivia stared out the window at the endless sky, trying to process everything. The father she'd imagined all these years, distant, uncaring, absorbed in his own life, was nothing like the man in those photos, the man who'd kept her childhood drawings and named a scholarship after her mother. The plane began its descent into Singapore, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our approach to Changi Airport. Local time is 10:15 p.m., and the temperature is a warm 82 degrees. On behalf of Phoenix Airlines and all our crew, we want to thank you for flying with us today." Olivia felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. In less than an hour, she would come face to face with the man she'd spent her whole life wondering about, a man who, it seemed, had never stopped thinking about her. As the plane touched down at Changi Airport, Olivia felt butterflies in her stomach. Her hands clutched the photo album Wailin had given her, unwilling to part with this unexpected treasure trove of memories she never knew existed. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Singapore," the captain announced. "Local time is 10:23 p.m. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we reach the gate and the seatbelt sign is turned off." Olivia stayed out the window at the glittering lights of the airport. Unlike the original plan to meet her father next week at a neutral location, she now had no idea what would happen when she stepped off this plane. Wailin appeared at her side. "Miss Chen, when we disembark, would you mind waiting until the other passengers have exited? There's a special arrival procedure for certain travelers." Olivia nodded, her throat suddenly dry. The reality of the situation was sinking in. She wasn't just meeting her estranged father. She was meeting a powerful businessman whose company employed thousands of people, including everyone on this aircraft. Is he? Olivia swallowed hard. Is he going to be there? At the airport? Wailin smiled gently. "I believe Mr. Chen has been at the airport for the past 3 hours, Miss Chen." When the plane reached the gate and passengers began gathering their belongings, Olivia remained seated, watching as the economy cabin slowly emptied. The mother with twins thanked her again as they passed. The businessman who had complained about the children gave her a curious look, wondering why she wasn't moving. Finally, only Olivia and the crew remained. Wailin gestured for her to follow. "We'll exit through the first-class cabin," she explained. "It's closer to the special arrivals area." As Olivia walked through first class, she couldn't help but notice the spacious seats and premium amenities she had declined. Yet she didn't regret her decision. That choice had led to this moment, to discovering who her father really was through the eyes of those who worked for him, rather than through a lens of luxury. At the aircraft door, Captain Huang himself was waiting to shake her hand. "It's been an honor having you aboard, Ms. Chen," he said with a small bow. "Your father was my mentor when I was training as a pilot. He's a good man." Olivia didn't know what to say. This was all happening so fast. Just yesterday, Raymond Chen had been a stranger, a distant figure she'd created in her imagination. Now she was about to meet him, surrounded by people who clearly respected him deeply. As she stepped off the plane, Olivia was met not by the usual airport bustle, but by a quiet, private walkway. A middle-aged woman in a crisp suit stood waiting. "Ms. Chen, I'm Mei Ling, your father's executive assistant. Welcome to Singapore." She gestured toward the end of the corridor. "He's waiting for you." With each step, Olivia's heart beat faster. What would she say to him? What would he say to her? 22 years of silence and separation couldn't be erased in a moment. And then there he was, standing alone, without an entourage at the end of the hallway. Raymond Chen looked exactly like his photos, tall, distinguished, with salt and pepper hair, and those eyes that matched Olivia's perfectly. But the photos hadn't captured the emotion that now played across his face. Hope, fear, and a love so powerful it made him look suddenly vulnerable. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Olivia clutched the photo album to her chest like a shield, while Raymond stood with his hands at his sides, seemingly afraid to reach out. "You look just like your mother," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. Those simple words broke the spell. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she took a tentative step forward. "I have your eyes," she replied. "And your chin. Mom always said so." Raymond's hands trembled slightly. "May I?" he asked, opening his arms hesitantly. Olivia nodded, and then she was engulfed in her father's embrace, the photo album pressed between them. He smelled of supple cologne and airplane coffee, and his arms were strong but gentle around her shoulders. Airport workers passing nearby tried not to stare, but the scene was too powerful to ignore. The formidable CEO of Phoenix Airlines, known for his composure and business acumen, openly weeping as he held his daughter for the first time in over 2 decades. "I had so many speeches prepared," Raymond said as they finally drew apart, wiping his eyes unashamedly. 22 years of things I wanted to tell you, and now I can't remember a single word." Olivia smiled through her own tears. "I know the feeling." Raymond glanced at the photo album in her hands. "I see why Lynn showed you that." "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia asked. "On the plane, when you found out I was coming, why keep it a secret that the airline was yours?" Her father's expression grew thoughtful. Because I wanted you to meet me, just me, before you met the businessman everyone else knows. I wanted to be your father first, not the owner of Phoenix Airlines. 3 months later, Olivia stood at the window of her father's spacious penthouse, gazing out at the Singapore skyline. The city had become familiar to her now, though no less magical than when she first arrived. Behind her, Raymond was on the phone, speaking quietly in Mandarin to one of his executives. So much had changed in such a short time. After their emotional reunion at the airport, Raymond had taken her to his home, a beautiful but surprisingly modest house considering his wealth. They had stayed up all night talking, filling in the missing pieces of their lives. Olivia learned how her father had started as a flight attendant, saving every penny until he could buy his first small aircraft. How he'd expanded the business one plane at a time, working 18-hour days for years. Raymond, in turn, had listened with rapt attention to stories of Olivia's childhood, a teaching career, the students she loved. He'd shown her a box containing every school photo her mother had secretly sent him, every newspaper clipping mentioning her name, every achievement she'd never known he'd celebrated from afar. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting," Raymond said, hanging up the phone and joining her at the window. "The Beijing route is having some scheduling issues." Olivia smiled. "It's fine. I'm still getting used to the idea that my dad runs an entire airline." "Not for much longer," Raymond replied with a mysterious smile. "I've been thinking about retirement." "What? But you love this business. Everyone says you practically live at the office." Raymond placed a hand on her shoulder. "I built Phoenix Airlines because I needed something to focus on when I lost you and your mother. The business filled a hole in my life. Now that hole is gone." The doorbell rang, and Mei Ling showed in a group of people Olivia had come to know well over the past months, the heads of various departments at Phoenix Airlines, along with Wai Lin, who had become a close friend. "Is everyone here?" Raymond asked, checking his watch. "Just waiting on Mr. Tan from the Education Foundation," Mei Ling replied. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Dad, what's going on? You've been secretive all week." Raymond just smiled and led her to the dining room, where a large table had been set up with documents and folders. As Mr. Tan arrived, Raymond gestured for everyone to take a seat. "Thank you all for coming," he began formally. "As you know, I've been considering the future of Phoenix Airlines for some time. Today, I'm announcing 2 major changes." He picked up a folder and handed it to Olivia. "First, I'm establishing a new education initiative called Wings for Teachers. It will provide fully funded travel opportunities for educators from underprivileged schools across America and Asia, allowing them to expand their cultural horizons and bring those experiences back to their classrooms." Olivia opened the folder to find detailed plans for the program, one that perfectly combined her teaching background with her father's airline expertise. "And I'd like you to run it," Raymond continued, "as the new director of educational outreach for Phoenix Airlines." Olivia's mouth fell open. "Dad, I don't know anything about running a corporate program." "But you know everything about what teachers need," he replied. "And these people," he gestured to the executives, "know how to make it happen. Together, you'll build something special." Before Olivia could respond, Raymond picked up another document. "The second announcement is this. Effective next month, I'm stepping down as CEO of Phoenix Airlines." Murmurs of surprise filled the room. "I've spent 22 years building this company while missing my daughter's life. I won't waste another day now that we're reunited." He looked around the table. "The board has approved my recommendation for a new CEO, someone who exemplifies the values this airline was built on." To Olivia's shock, he turned to Wai Lin. "Someone who started as a flight attendant, just like I did. Someone who showed kindness and discretion when it mattered most. Someone who recognized the worth of a person beyond their ticket class." Wai Lin's eyes widened as Raymond handed her the document. "Ms. Lin, will you accept the position?" The room erupted in applause as Wai Lin, speechless with surprise, nodded her acceptance. Later that evening, as Olivia and Raymond walked along the Singapore waterfront, she asked the question that had been on her mind. "Are you really giving it all up? Just like that?" Raymond stopped to watch a boat passing by. "I'm not giving up anything. I'm gaining everything I've always wanted, time with my daughter." He smiled at her. "You know, when you declined that first-class seat, Wai Lin told me immediately. She said, "She's just like you, sir. She sees people, not positions." "I was just being practical," Olivia shrugged. "That mom needed the space more than I did." "That's exactly why your educational program will succeed," Raymond said proudly. "You understand what really matters." As they continued walking, Raymond asked about her plans for the Boston apartment. "I'll keep it," Olivia decided. "I can split my time, summers and holidays here in Singapore, teaching during the school year, and running the program from both places." Raymond nodded, clearly pleased that she wasn't giving up her teaching career entirely. "The company jet will be at your disposal, of course. Though knowing you, you'll probably insist on flying economy." They both laughed, remembering how their reunion had begun. "First class has its perks," Olivia admitted. "But I think I'll always have a soft spot for economy. After all, that's where this whole story really started." "No," Raymond said softly, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "It started 25 years ago, when I held a tiny baby girl and promised I'd find my way back to her someday, no matter how long it took." Overhead, a Phoenix Airlines plane soared across the evening sky, its lights blinking against the darkness, connecting worlds just as Raymond and Olivia had finally connected theirs.